Hello everyone and welcome at our panel. My name is Laurenz Van Ginneken. I'm a project manager at the European Network of Political Foundations working on the Women and Youth Democratic Engagement Initiative, working on political parties initiated by the European Commission. This panel is brought to you by the European Liberal Forum, ELF, the official think tank and political foundation of the ALDE party, part of the Renew Europe group in the European Parliament. We do have a critical and timely topic today, the persistent threat of foreign interference in Europe. I'm actually very pleased for having such an excellent panel today with two members of the European Parliament. We have here with us today Michał Kobosko for Poland 2050 in the Renew Europe group, and also Petras Auštrevičius for the Liberals movement, Lithuania, also member of the Renew Europe group. And finally, last but definitely not least, just joining us now, Witold Jurasz, journalist and former policy analyst and former diplomat. Unfortunately, we would have had one more speaker, but unfortunately, Sabina Fati won't be able to join us today due to unforeseen circumstances. We'll have a conversation together today, moving from the nature of the threat to the strategy of our response. And I actually want to begin a little bit with maybe a slightly provocative question to frame the whole discussion. And I'm going to address to Mr. Kobosko. We are here to talk about the foreign adversaries, but let's be maybe blunt. Haven't they already won a significant victory by simply becoming one of the main topics in our society today? By sometimes by focusing ourselves so hard on Russia and China, aren't we being sometimes dangerously distracted from addressing our own internal failings?
Thank you very much for this question. I understand that I will be allowed to speak in Polish here. Yes, we have some Polish speakers and non-Polish speakers. Drodzy Państwo, dziękuję bardzo za to pytanie. Witam serdecznie. To jest takie pytanie, czy...
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Really, how I understand this question, have we already lost it? Have we lost it as Poland, Europe, as the democratic Europe, European Union? Or are we actually facing the situation that nothing can be done? It is true that the times are such that getting attention, attracting attention, triggering interest is the critical thing for you to win, and it really determines who's going to win. But I completely disagree with the claim that they have already prevailed and won against us. I believe that this is a wrong concept. If you are interested in what others are doing or how they are thinking, it doesn't mean that we side with their opinion. It doesn't mean that we let them win. It doesn't mean that we let them dominate. We live in the world, and I'm speaking as a former journalist. We are speaking in a terrible world. We are subject to disinformation. Disinformation is ruling. It's definitely prevailing over information. That could be our final conclusion, and that's it, nothing to talk about. And we would reach the conclusion that we reached the point of no return, and we are beyond rescue. But I think that it is true that whatever President Trump is doing gets a lot of attention. Whatever China is doing gets a lot of attention. Whatever happens in all those heated points all over the world. But it doesn't mean that they prevailed. It doesn't mean that they won and that we lost the case. I believe that we stand a chance. The very fact that someone is trying to mount some aggression against Europe, that this is their tactics, that this is what they do, doesn't mean that we let them win, that we let them dominate. We have to respond. And myself, I am a believer that all those aggressive actions pursued against Europe, be it actions or words, do not mean that we are a lost case, do not mean that we are doomed, but others are actually ruling or setting the rules of the game. that Europe is just there to sit and age, and we will become a beautiful skansen, but others may come just for to see as a sightseeing attraction. No, I definitely disagree with that. I don't believe that we lost it. We do have a lot of arguments in favor of Europe. We are still a strong economy. We are a big customer, if you will, over 400 million people. We have strong economies. We have something that sounds kind of out of style, but we do have values, democratic values, that are actually live. And many countries around the world are envious of that. We do have our soft power that is projecting beyond our hard power. But we should be smart how we use it. And I think that we should be bolder than we are, because I do believe that we let them push us in a corner, but we should not sit in the corner. Myself, I am for bolder actions. And I think that we should be more openly speaking about our advantages, about our strength, and we should not get intimidated. We should not let them push us in the corner. We are now victim. As Europe, we are now victims. If we are a victim of anything, we are a victim of our own activities or our own failures to act. But the situation is not as gloom as your question.
Will that also is really based on the European values that we also defend. And you've also touched shortly about disinformation, like the large disinformation campaigns that we are having here. But when we talk about that disinformation, there's a question to you, Mr. Jurasz. When we talk about disinformation, for example, when we look at Russia, are they primarily creating new divisive subjects, for example, from scratch? Or is there a more opportunists or like simply exploiting pre-existing cracks and grievances in our society today? Sometimes issues that our own liberal elites are perhaps failing to properly address.
So thank you very much. And if you allow me, gentlemen, I'll also, given that the majority of us who have gathered here are Polish speakers, I'll speak in Polish. So thanks for your question.
Well, I would say that the Russian disinformation differs from the Soviet propaganda in such a way that Soviets tried to convince the world and the Western world about superiority of their model. Russians do not try to convince us about anything. Sometimes they actually have this narrative about high morality of Russia. But even when they speak about this high morale in Russia, they try to prove to us that we are as in a decade, but they are not trying to prove that their model is superior or more attractive than ours. As you phrased it in your questions, if we didn't have our own grievances, if we didn't have our own challenges with our own governance, Russians wouldn't have things to thrive on. They wouldn't have the fuel for their disinformation. So I think that the first thing is the model of capitalism that is operating in the Western world. As a result of this model, average German citizens or French citizens feel that it doesn't concern me. 60 years ago, average French or average German was actually believing that their life will get better. Today, we think that our life will get worse. So we replaced capitalism with the turbo capitalism, or the capitalism with the boost. And that was not a good choice. And now look what Russians are doing in Poland in terms of our relationship with Ukraine. The whole story of Wołyń, so the history of Polish-Ukrainian dispute and the conflict about Wołyń. And this is really something that is really triggering. And until recently, whenever someone mentions something about Wołyń, let's say, in the elite society, they would be ostracized. And in my opinion, this is completely illogical when we were actually saying to the Polish general public that we should apologize to the Jews for the slaughter committed by Polish citizens on Jewish citizens being encouraged by the Nazis. But the same community would be saying that Poles do not need to be apologized for anything. So then when you look at the anti-Semitism, you know, the very root of anti-Semitism is the belief that Jewish people are better and they can do more than others. So those who became anti-Semites are actually just taking it further. And what the neoliberal communities were, or societies were doing, they were throwing the fuel for anti-Semitism, and now it backfires. So to me, it's quite obvious that problems are there. There are historical problems, there are legacy problems, and you cannot sweep it under the table. But the question is how you're going to respond to that. And in my opinion, we don't have any response. We hold a lot of conferences about disinformation. Like recently, I was invited to join a project. I've been watching the Eastern developments for over 20 years. And surprisingly, this new project was about 9 people, and I have never met anyone on that team. On top of it, none of them spoke Russian, but they are just connected to the right politicians. So there were no experts on Russia, no experts on disinformation. So something was very wrong with that project. But that's a side comment. The question is whether we should not just be on the defense. Perhaps let's mount an attack. Let's have a farm of trolls and let's attack Russia. So if they want to really hit us on Facebook or Twitter, we can actually hit them on contact, on their own system. Their system is less stable than ours. And on top of it, the US is no longer our ally. Mark Zuckerberg is not our ally. And Elon Musk is no longer our ally. And until we have the obligatory registration on Facebook or Twitter, obviously this is not a popular statement. When I said that once, all the supporters of the Polish Confederation Party have been throwing a lot of hate at me, claiming that I want to install a censorship. No, I'm not a censor. I'm not for censorship. I just want to know whether I'm facing a real person who's posting something or whether this is a Russian troll. And we need to defend our democracy. President Macron said that very clearly recently. And he actually used the very tough words. So I believe that we need more courage. 2 main political parties in Poland are really afraid of the third political power, emerging power, Confederation, far right, then we are helpless in face of Russia.
That will also in the talks regarding also the alliances and the fight back. But if I take like one little step back, Mr. Auštrevičius, let's go back to those cracks, because we have heard already a few of the cracks that are in grievances within our societies. Do you agree with the ones that have been mentioned, or what do you think that the specific vulnerabilities in our democracies are? May it be in our ecosystems from the media, our political division, or our electoral laws? Do you agree with the ones that were touched upon, like the cracks that, for example, Russia is taking advantage of, or do you think there are different cracks in society?
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, to Freedom Games and European Liberal Forum for bringing us together and having a possibility to approach you and to listen to you and to convey certain ideas as well. Well, you know, the very essence of the Western civilization is a kind of tolerance to different opinions. So we are all allowed by our political system to have questions.
to question. And indeed, I mean, to be engaged into the debate. Debate not necessarily denying, but in most of the cases presenting something new. I mean, alternative or own opinion by describing, presenting our arguments and so on and so forth. In authoritarian regimes, no, there is no such a chance. I mean, they are somehow united among the single leader, some set of so-called national ideas or values, and they have to serve for the leader as well as for those values. And this is probably a kind of the channel for those authoritarian regimes who are in a constant war with democracies. Let's agree on this. So we do have very serious enemies worldwide. I'm not short of description. They really hate us. They don't want, I mean, to see us thriving, you know, going more competitive, more visible, winning more political games and so on and so forth. So that's why they use each and every chance to push us on the edge. And I would say even more. In the 21st century, disinformation, propaganda, foreign interferences become more powerful than Kalashnikov machine gun. So those means like foreign interferences and propaganda are weapons of the 21st century. Massive weapons of 21st century, in fact, directed against the Western societies. Because if to look wider, the authoritarian regimes, probably with the exclusion of Chinese economic development, they don't achieve spectacular results. They have to explain it. And probably that's why they point out, I mean, to our social economic challenges, sometimes problems, because we're not given a bright future guarantee. So we have to fight for, we have to compete for. And they use each and every chance, I mean, to point at us, telling, well, that system failed. Those poor people are, you know, taken by politicians who have no responsibility, who have no idea how to build a better future, and so on and so forth. So that's why we have to be very serious. And indeed, I predict that this kind of a competition, collision of democratic and non-democratic systems, as you know, last year we have achieved in the world a kind of very dangerous balance. First time in 30 or 40 years, a number of non-democratic countries exceeded democratic countries' number. This is something. This is something. So one may say that democracy can't sell itself as the best system, but probably, I mean, we shouldn't be so, you know, critical about ourselves. I mean, authoritarian regimes invest much more. And that was a very good point, that present adversaries of us, in particular political ones, they didn't invent anything new. They simply took a good experience, what they, you know, accomplished as well as gained long periods of time. I mean, Soviets always had a absolutely amazing ideological system. I mean, foreign service, I mean, KGB was based on lies, on disinformation and propaganda. So that's why for Putin being a part of KGB, it's just an easy fix. So those systems which challenge us, they have really experience. Now they have ambition, and probably they see some cracks in our societies which they want to explore at the expense of us.
Thank you very much. And also upon what you just touched, I'm looking now also at Mr. Kobosko, because this brings us actually also to a new major question. We seem to be seeing two approaches on how to respond to the interference, like an American and the European way of responding. The Americans today, the approach of more like President Trump, is to, it appears to favor dialogue and potential cooperation with some of those regimes, where they even sit together with leaders like Putin, or like also talking about Lukashenko, while focusing its primary strategic rivalry on China at the same time. Meanwhile, Europe remains firm in its stance and not ruling out further sanctions against its eastern neighbors. So how do you see this divergence shaping the future of the transatlantic relationships that we have and our collective effectiveness?
Powiedziałbym, że to jest
I would say that's a key question we are facing nowadays. So, in other words, how are we responding to Trump's approach that he has taken in his second term of office? It doesn't look good from Europe's perspective, especially the infamous Scotland agreement signed between Trump and Madam von der Leyen, which was Europe's failure, or which showed that Europe is lacking arguments in trade disputes with the United States. I consistently believe dialogue is essential. It's an obvious form of contact and is a better form of contact than dealing with your adversaries or partners with guns put next to their head. And this is what Trump is doing. Trump is using simple solutions or radical solutions. He changes his opinion frequently and quickly. He calls it a tactic, a negotiation tactic. Well, others could say it's a chaos in negotiations. A few days ago, for instance, Trump sanctioned two oil companies from Russia. Luckily, the first sanctions imposed by this administration on Russia after 9 months of getting to power. But to be honest, I don't know. Maybe he will take them back next week after one phone call with Putin. You never know. He may say Putin loves peace, which he mentioned before, and which led to this unfortunate meeting in Alaska. This was a miserable meeting for Trump as a representative of the West, and lucky for Putin. So it's a good thing that the Budapest meeting did not take place. Not because the war continues. Everybody wants this war to be over, but not on Putin's principles, and not on the principles that occasionally Trump accepts. Let's say every other week, because on other days Trump is sending tomahawks to help Ukraine. I'm saying this in a slightly jocular way, but what we are facing are really times of uncertainty, and Europe is in trouble. How to deal with this situation? We, as all Europeans, we've been learning this for 20-plus years, we as a Polish society, but Europe as a whole, since the Second World War, has reached a moment when we are trying to reach a consensus, a compromise, an agreement, an understanding, and we are very proud of being where we are. And nowadays we have very tense discussions that maybe we should withdraw from the principle of unanimous voting in the EU, which is something that makes us proud. It's this holy principle, but it makes us slow to decide. It delays our decision-making process, and very often one state is able to block or at least act as if it's blocking decisions. And we are dealing with a group of 27 states, about to be 30-plus states, including Western Balkans, and eventually also Ukraine, hopefully, when it's redeveloped after the war. So we have this great asset we are proud of. People envy us for our achievement because we have the European Union, and since it was formed, we have not had any wars. And before, wars were more prevalent in Europe, not peace, between different nations, between different regions, even internally. So I'm not selling an over optimistic picture of EU, but still we are proud of what we have built together, what we are creating together. and as Poland, Lithuania, and other Central European countries for 20 plus years now. So we are in a way stuck between the US and China. We do not compare those two countries, neither do we compare Russia. But it's not China that is the biggest threat for Europe nowadays. It's Russia. It's a very specific, concrete threat. Putin never said that his plans for expansion or reconstructing his empire will finish with Ukraine. Actually, quite the contrary. He always claims that he wants to bring Russians the empire that was ruined by Yeltsin and Gorbachev. But today we are facing the situation that we have. We have an aggressor in Europe, and we, people who were raised in peace, also the Central European countries, even though, yes, our traditions are different than the traditions of than the history of the Western European countries in the 20th century. But we are this land of peace, and we need to push back possible aggression. We have to resist it, and it affects the way we take our decisions. Also, I understand countries that are more distant from Ukraine do not feel this is a so special situation, that this is not business as usual. But I go there, I work there. I believe they treat the situation seriously. They understand our circumstances better now, and new programs start to emerge, like the arming policies or decisions to redevelop a European defense industry. This is happening. And yes, young Germans, young French people do not want to go to the army. They do not want to be enlisted. But as surprising as it may sound, Germans have a problem with that. They're not able to have an army that they should. I believe they have 180,000 soldiers in Bundeswehr. And they tried different methods, the decision makers, the Ministry of Defense in Germany, to increase the army count, the number of soldiers, unsuccessfully so far. But I believe the Central and Eastern Europe gives a great positive example. We try to spread the interest in the situation, and the whole Europe understands that this time the situation is different. It's a risky one. We cannot fully rely on our American ally, because you never know how stable and how certain administration decisions will be. So we, at the end of the day, need to be able to defend ourselves. That's our thought.
Want to react?
Tak, ja chciałbym dosłownie nawiązać.
Yes, I just wanted to say very briefly about what Michał Kobosko mentioned, that China nowadays is not the biggest threat for us. That's a fact. However, it would be good for Americans to understand that. 1 year ago in Kyiv, at a conference European security, David Petras spoke, and he said, former CIA chief, he said that the American policy of stopping China will not be successful without Europe. And perhaps we should remind this to Americans, maybe not us, not us, the Poles or the Lithuanians. Let's not take the front row. Let's hide behind our allies with this sad message to the American administration. But it's time for Americans to understand that if they turn their back at Europe, we have no reason to support them in the China affair, because Chinese are not a threat to us.
But there is one more thing to it. You may say that, like containing China, what is the connection with Russia here? Why Trump believes that he has to strike a deal with Russia? He believes in inverted Kissinger or inverted Nixon, Tucker Carlson, who's sort of semi-smart. When you listen to them, actually can hear, but he is completely clueless. He doesn't know what is the difference between Russia and the Soviet Union, the China today and the China of Mao times, etc. But you need to explain to those people. As liberal Europe, we have to be in dialogue, including people like Tucker Carlson, Breitbart, or Steve Bannon, and all other types like that. And I would be happy to send them to like deep south of the US and let them do whatever they want to. But regretfully, they are based in Washington, D.C., and we need to keep talking to them.
Fundacja Liberté. But do you actually, Mr. Auštrevičius, do you agree with that? Should we talk indeed more with these figures that sometimes here in Europe we give them a stamp also of populist because we don't always have the same views on certain things? Do you think we should actually maybe indeed engage more into dialogues or into talking to people like Tucker Carlson, for example?
Well, where the foreign interference is indeed successful, it reaches out parts of the political societies in the West. And you wish or not, they start to repeat or probably even to elaborate on the concepts that the foreign interference is about. So they do it in their own way, very national way, I mean, from one country to another, from one political party, from one social group to another. But they do repeat and in fact become even somebody whom we might call even preachers of foreign interferences, telling that, well, I mean, our system is underdeveloped. I mean, we are in a weaker position. Look, I mean, we're facing such a, kind of mountain of problems and so on and so forth. I mean, to talk to them or to ignore them, I don't think there is one general, one solution fits for all. In some cases, yes, they've been involved, like, for example, some 5 or 6 years ago, True Finns, I mean, the first populistic right-wing political party in Finland. It got into the ruling coalition. They didn't produce any spectacular results. Well, their ministers, their representatives were somehow become common among the political system. They didn't, so to say, produce any magic things. So, in fact, I mean, the popularity of that party dropped sufficiently, and now they are not indeed very influential as they've been before. In other cases, I mean, probably it's more dangerous. I don't know. I mean, I take Finns as very responsible political community. I mean, they really, that Finns are most reading nation in Europe, which probably explains again. I mean, you can approach such a society probably through rational points of view. Otherwise, I mean, when people read only titles and they take 1 or 2 sentences, they do not go deep into the analysis, it might be indeed dangerous, I mean, to play along with the populists because they're usually smarter in using language, symbols, explanations. So we are not at the speed of populists because we inside constrained by our responsible kind of policy approach and the rest. So I don't have one explanation for all of it. We have to be indeed careful approaching all those political parties, but I'm sure we will have no shortage of those politicians and parties in Europe in years to come.
And actually following up on that as well for you, Mr. Auštrevičius, because with a responsible way of looking at it, we also look at our legal ways, how we can solve certain things. So what are currently maybe the most effective international legal means that we have fighting foreign interference? And what are these legal tools truly, are they sufficient for what is essential, a hybrid information-based conflict?
Right, I'll tell you one my personal experience in this regard. I mean, not probably falling exactly into your great question, but nevertheless. Again, 6 or 7 years ago, when this issue of foreign propaganda and interferences came out, and we finally realized that we have to do something. Look, we can't live with them. It really hurts. It becomes dangerous, and it really has an influence on our societies and our systems, generally speaking. And foreign interferences, they are not just about politics, by the way. They take a range of issues. And very, very often, as it was rightly pointed, historical issues, culture-based issues, popular culture-based issues. I talked to my colleague from really big Western country. I said to her, look, we have to do something with, I meant definitely Russian culture, propaganda, influence, kind of import to the West. She looked at me and she said, don't touch culture. I mean, culture is something what we shouldn't get engaged. I mean, it should be left for culture people. I mean, politicians have no right, I mean, to speak about this and so on. After some years, she improved. Now she recognizes a full scale of things, dangerous things coming from even culture-affiliated propaganda and so on. But I believe we have to be never short of means and using even complete ban. I mean, what do you do on social media when you are followed by, those, comments which are troll-based? I mean, they have no rationale. I mean, they are not, targeting discussion. I mean, they are targeting you just to produce an image that you're failing and somebody else taking over. Ban. Sorry. I mean, I don't see it as a something radically bad. So that's why sometimes complete sanitaire, cordon sanitaire must be applied in this regard, because there is no any meaningful, goal. I mean, to go along with such a propaganda. Again, sanctioning certain persons who are very active, well paid, well positioned to pronounce all those things. I think they have to be prosecuted. We have more than enough arguments, legal arguments for this. So there is no, again, universally accepted concept how to fight this. I think we are still in a process of developing it, but I would use sometimes even kind of radical approach in order to stop those open lies being thrown into the face of our society.
Thank you so much, and it's indeed like it will need a total holistic approach, not just about the minds, but also about the hearts of the people. And when we're talking about this holistic approach and the development of the strategy that we're currently making, should fighting disinformation be a job, or does it have to be a mission? And this is a question towards Mr. Jurasz. And also, like, how will this distinction change the resources and urgency and approach that we take? Should it be a job or a mission?
Well, I actually, przepraszam. Myślę, że to musi być jedno i drugie.
I think that we need to look at it as both. It has to be a combination of efforts pursued by the governments. And I agree with the previous speaker. You have to be fully radical, and you have to show no mercy when you fight against Russians. And I don't have a phobia here. My children were born in Russia, and I still like some rock bands from Russia. Most of them have emigrated, luckily, so I don't feel ashamed when I listen to their music. But I learned one thing, and I worked in Russia and in Belarus for some time. So Russians give in only in face of prevailing force. And from time to time, so a side digression, sorry, but I will try to answer your question shortly. So from time to time, I speak to Arab media outlets, I use an interpreter because I don't speak Arabic. And from time to time, I speak on Arabic TVs. And on one program, I had a gentleman from Moscow who was threatening a nuclear annihilation of Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And during the break, I told him where the Russian Karabl, where the Russian ship was told to go. And after the second break, he changed his attitude. Laila, my interpreter, asked me, look, what did you tell him? What did you tell him? But suddenly he became so nice. I said, look, this is out of place for me to explain to you what I told him. But she said, but how come that he became nice when you spoke to him and you spoke about things that are not speakable? And I said, because he's Russian. And all of us are nodding in agreement here, sharing the same understanding. But I think that if we had the Western audience here, obviously some of you are from Western countries, but nevertheless, I think that if we have more Western people here, they would be more surprised and less entertained. So this is the homework that we need to do. We have to keep explaining. But at the same time, if we want to be credible while explaining, we cannot be perceived as people who simply hate Russia or have Russian phobia. So we need to support independent Russian communities, and we need to actively fight Russian disinformation. You cannot do it as a sort of unorganized effort. But let's stop organizing conferences about the Russian disinformation. Because when I think about the number of events and reports that were produced about it, it's pointless. It doesn't help you fight the Russian disinformation. Why just to, talk about it in the grandiose terms? Let's stop handing out money to people who are completely clueless and do some blah, blah report that has no meaning whatsoever and doesn't help with anything. And let's actually revise the law. And this is your job, gentlemen, because apparently we are not allowed to set up the troll farms. This is against the law. Myself, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I think that the Polish law enforcement services were breaking the law on so many occasions that they can do it again, and now for the good purpose, just to, fight our cause. But our law enforcement or secret services are more likely to break the law when they are motivated by some vested interests, so to speak. So let them do the troll farms in India or wherever. Let's have the budget for it. And another homework for you, gentlemen, for the European Parliament members. When you look at the market today, we have several hundred Russian journalists that are out of work. It's been like 6 months since Donald Trump decided to cancel their budgets of such media outlets. And I actually have known about several individuals who were frightened, but nevertheless decided to go back home to Russia because they were simply left without any resources. They were not able to support themselves. Is it hard to find 100 or 200 million and to employ them for the rightful cause? Let's say that 4 of us together, we get 100 million euro, a budget. We are able to set up editorial team, Russian language speaking. And it's still possible today, but in 1 year, these people will disappear. And we will not be able to do it. Some of them will retrain and start doing something else. Others will lose their hope. Some of them will start to work for the Russian services. Nothing is getting done about it.
To respond to that.
Tak, chcę zareagować, bo...
Yes, I do want to respond to that because I fully agree with all these postulates and suggestions. But it's not that nothing is getting done, because we have a lot of discussions. We also talk to the European commissioners. In Strasbourg this week, we met with Commissioner Marta Kos, who's responsible for enlargement. So she's leading the negotiations with candidate countries that are still interested to join the club, and countries that are still dreaming about that dream and would like to get there at some point in the future. And we actually spoke about it, that we don't have sufficient number of initiatives that would really not only fight disinformation, but also actually channel the information in the other direction. Because this is what you said, this is the gap, especially after the US has done what they have done. So they canceled the budgets for the independent Russian media that were broadcasting from the US, but also they canceled budgets for the USAID. And as a result, they starved a lot of independent media outlets all around the world. But now we are specifically interested in this part of the world. And we really want to have some capacity to have some countermeasures against what Russia is doing. I'm not sure what is the legal status of the trolls and farming the trolls. I believe that I would have no objection against doing it. This is primitive but quite efficient operation. Why not to respond to what they are doing? And on the other hand, to set up the European media outlet, like the Voice of America, or that would be sort of funded by the European Union. But I think that this is not out of reach. And actually, we have such discussion with the Commissioner and with the European Commission. The Commission is currently working on the new budget, on the multi-annual financial framework. But this is the budget for the European Union, and there is a fight for each euro. And we really want to have allocations for such purposes. Since US decided not to provide any more funding for that, we need to bridge the gap. For instance, to finance Russian-speaking media, or to target Russians or Belarusians. I believe that we need to have the European Russian-speaking media outlet in Europe. We need to support independent media that target such societies as Russians and Belarusians. We need to support such initiatives as a Bielsat TV, broadcasting from Poland, which is part of the Polish TV group, but has programs in Russian and Belarusian. So these are strong elements of Polish information ecosystem, and we need to keep it strong, because I have to say that as of today, our efficacy is kind of poor, and the information war is being lost at this point in time. And when I speak to the opposition from Belarus, for instance, Tikhanovskis were actually talking to us this week, and Mr. Tikhanovskis, when he spoke at the European Parliament, said that Belarus in the future should be like Finland in the 20th century. It should be a neutral country. And to be honest, I was surprised, because I see no place in Europe for any neutral country. One Switzerland is enough. I think that they cannot afford to stay neutral. No one else is neutral. There is no room for it. There is no room for neutrality. The world is black and white, and so is Europe. And yes, we have a lot to do here.
Do you also think that these ideas, because if I also remember the Commission with the democracy shield regarding democratic resilience, many ideas, and then afterwards, indeed, a criticism that Mr. Jurasz just gave as well. I attended a few of those conferences. It was all talk. It was literally just talking. Sometimes when I was thinking, sitting in the audience, like, are we paying for this, for what was being said there? That this, like, everyone's just like doing whatever, because nobody actually knows the marching order where we're going, that we have no point where we are working to. Do you think that these ideas and initiatives have the coherence to work to a certain point where we want to land? And do you think we will actually take off with these initiatives? Because sometimes, indeed, the criticism is lots of talking, but no doing.
Well, let me to reply to your question using one example. Again, very practical example. When Putin took Donbas, and well, things started to evolve in eastern Ukraine, you know, there have been even food crisis, and European Union was major supplier and provider of food. I mean, flour, grain, and so on and so forth. It was marked, it was done through United Nations humanitarian assistance channels and so on and so forth. If, for example, on white bags, only United Nations symbol. We asked the Commission and then Mogherini, High Representative, why we don't see anything, because we knew that European Union pays for this, not United Nations. European Union pays for this. Why there is nothing of the European Union symbols? No flag, no symbol. Why we shy away? Why we are afraid, to show our, to demonstrate our real support? The reply was, let's not provoke Russians. Imagine, even providing humanitarian assistance to those who are attacked by Russians, we think that we will provoke Russians for something worse if we print, our flags and symbols on this. So, shame on us. We do not realize the essence of really fight for hearts and minds of people. We're still too bureaucratic. We're too slow. We are constrained by our old school beliefs in this regard. But I think time has come, to get serious, indeed. And from this democratic shield, by the way, Marta Kos is responsible for democratic shield as well. So we have to come with certain practical solutions. If 2 years in the European Parliament will be spent again on organizing every month speech, dialogues, conferences, meetings, and so on, with no exact, 10 points plan, what to do, how much it might cost, and in which way we're gonna implement this, so it will be another failure. Because things don't settle themselves. They have to be settled by us, by financing, really broadcasting, reaching out people in Belarus, in Russia, even in China. Don't forget about China. It's utmost important as well. Market for information, provisions from our side. So that's why I completely agree. But I have a good news for the West. With us, we are not new members, by the way. Forget about this title to be a new member of the European Union. 20 years and you are still new? I remember, I negotiated the accession of my country in 2004. Finland was 10 years old member, and we didn't call it a new member of 10 years. So, I have a very good news. Look, we came to the European Union with a good experience of economic reforms. Don't you remember inflation 200, 800%, 1,000%? And we have a very good understanding on what the fight for freedom is about, okay? And we are not going to be silenced. We are not going to be, pushed aside. We will stand where we are on our beliefs and our experience. So that's why I don't see a big risk for the West to fail once again, once we are in.
Well, thank you very much. Well, coming from the West, because I was born in Belgium, I was raised in Belgium, went to school in Belgium, ale też mam korzenie polskie. Ale ja nigdy nie byłem w Polsce.
But I also have Polish roots. I never went to Polish school. I never learned Polish. I'm not literate in Polish. But I noticed there is a big misunderstanding in Belgium when it comes to Polish people, Lithuanians, Latvians, and so on, and the experience shared by all those nations when it comes to the war in Ukraine.
But if we want to really have a holistic approach, indeed, of having a European strategy, but like literally a European strategy, how can we further indeed bring the West, like Western Europe and Eastern Europe together? And I'm actually also not afraid of saying this. How can we break the arrogance of Western Europe? Because in the West, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, we're, like I always have felt always this that they were also kind of looking down on Central and Eastern Europe, and that still lives even today, even on subjects where Central Europe is the expert in economical reform, but also in how to deal with oppressive and authoritarian regimes. Then my question would be, how can we unify that European spirit to really build a union, but also a union of the people?
Well, I think it's... Znowu, przepraszam.
Okay, wrong language. I apologize. So I believe it takes two things. First of all, some modesty, being humble. When we believe we are experts in the East, I do not think this is the case. We are not experts when it comes to Belarus. I believe this is our failure. So first, let's look at the areas in which we failed. Well, yes, we recognize Russia was a threat. Chancellor Merkel did not see that coming. But there's another element I want to emphasize. So long as we struggle in this paranoia, anti-German, anti-French, as the chief of the Law and Justice Party, he claims that French and Germans want to deprive us of our country. They want to take away our country. That's a paranoia. But our coalition is identified as an ally of Germany. This is not the case. But this influences the public debate in good circles, so to say. Because this is not an act of courage to criticize Germany when Germany is self-criticizing already. It was an act of courage before Germany started criticizing themselves, especially that their criticism is quite shallow. So we need some internal compromise, and that requires far right, the right wing to become less paranoid, but also it requires the liberal circles, and my apologies, Michał, to you, from living in deceit. We have too much in Poland. Ombudsman for the German policy, and in Germany we do not have anybody supporting Polish policy. I do remember when Law and Justice Party was in power, and I remember German publicists who would write wrong things about Poland in their media. They were right to do so, but when when the time came to criticize Germans in the German media, silence was there. Only two people dared to do that, Ambassador Reiter and Szczepan Twardoch. All the liberal publicists who were able to at least attempt to criticize it. Of course, nobody guarantees that they will publish your text, your editorial, but nobody even tried to have their texts published. Well, I did. But my name is not a household name. I do not have this recognition that would attract attention, that would actually leverage anything on the German side. So let's organize things in our yard, and we'll be more effective.
Because we're at the end of the time.
Czyli krótko, bardzo krótko.
Okay, so briefly, my colleague called for modesty when it comes to Eastern politics, and when it comes to sharing some solutions not known to the Western society. I agree. But also, Germany, France, Italy, and Spain call for no modesty because in many domains, in many topics, we were right, they were not. And we hear that every day. Poland is still a symbol of success when it comes to development, and Central and Eastern Europe is believed to be a successful area and a place where dynamic growth happens, while the Western economies and Western societies are stagnating. We keep growing. They do not have any golden tools to help them get out of the point in which they are. Poland, when we won the elections in 2023, we said goodbye to the populists. Well, we don't know how long that will last. We'll see what 2027 will bring. But politically, Poland is perceived to be a healthy being in a sickening Europe. I don't think French people could could imagine a situation where every week the government would actually be removed. So there is a complete political chaos over there. And again, we are not a new member of the EU, of course. When you are 21, you know a bit about your life, and you need to take accountability for your life. And you cannot let others treat you as a child or as a lesser child. So let's have self-esteem, let's be accountable, and let's be co-responsible for Europe.
Mr. Auštrevičius.
I will. In fact, I see two major things. Look, for historical justice, we have to keep unification of Europe on. The more even Eastern European, Western Balkan countries will join European Union, you will see with time to come, as Poland, as Lithuania, look, we become more developed, we provide jobs, we provide new innovations, possibilities. And second thing, convergence. Convergence in understanding. Laurenz is the best example. Look, he's Polish speaking. More Western European kind of geography described. Students will come to our countries to learn. More they will recognize, more languages they will learn, more historical stories they will learn, the better it will be for both sides. This kind of thinking in convergence, I am a strong believer. It will take time, but let's invest into this cultural contacts, which, by the way, must be supported by ever-improving infrastructure. Railways, more air connectivity. We have to be connected. So that's why through these investments, economic investments, I am sure political convergence and contacts will improve and we will succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A warm thank you and a warm applause for the panel tonight. Thank you very much for today. And I also want to thank you for being here with us today. Thank you very much. Also thank you to the organizations of Liberté and European Liberal Forum. This was Laurenz Van Ginneken, and see you next year.
Well, Atlas Network is, as the name suggests, a network, and it's global. We work all around the world. We're based in the U.S. It's a network, that is to say, organizations that share common values of limited government, of free enterprise, personal liberty, of personal responsibility.
Atlas Network provides training and support to help build capacity, but most importantly, we give our partners the tools they need to be successful.
Mam plan na bezpieczną firmę. To plan firmowy z cybertarczą, która blokuje zagrożenia w sieci.
Cyberbezpieczeństwo? Masz od tego Orange. Teraz cybertarcza za 0 zł we wszystkich planach firmowych, a w wybranych smartfony 50% taniej. Orange tu jest.
Telewizja Polska to więcej tego, co widzowie cenią najbardziej. pasjonujące filmy i seriale, a w obsadzie najbardziej gorące nazwiska. Największe sportowe imprezy i momenty, które przejdą do historii. Bieżące wydarzenia, którymi żyje Polska i świat. Przebojowe koncerty, które łączą w zabawie wszystkich Polaków. Znakomite spektakle, które gromadzą rekordową publiczność. Telewizja Polska. Otwórz się na więcej.
Do zgłoszeń? Gotowi? Start!
Ja zgłoszę bibliotekę!
Ja, pierwszy basen w gminie.
Ja amfiteatr od naszej orkiestry.
Wszystko w Waszych rękach. Co powstanie dzięki wsparciu totalizatora sportowego w Twojej okolicy? Zgłoś obiekt sportowy lub kulturalny. Wejdź na stronę gdygrasz.pl, bo gdy grasz, wszystko gra.